Hi, guys, and welcome back to Left on Red. It's your host, Sierra Claire, and today we're going to be talking about, by the title, I Got Laid Off, so what's next? Okay, so we're actually going to be picking up right from the end of the Eat, Pray, Love episode. So if you haven't listened to that episode, go back, please listen. It's such a good episode, and it does give a lot of context into me kind of getting laid off, like the kind of just like segues nicely into what happens next after I come back from Europe. But uh listen to the episode. It's really good. And let's just dive right in to me coming back from Turkey and what happened. So grab a snack, grab a drink. If you're driving, turn the volume up. If you're working out, this is the best podcast to be listening to while you're doing literally anything. So let's get right into today's episode. So if you didn't listen to the Eat, Pray, Love quick summary of the end, I won't do the whole, hour episode, but a quick summary of the end is I decided to leave my remote job that provided me with all that flexibility to travel around Europe for 12 weeks because I knew I wanted to go back and live in London and just kind of be overseas and live that life and do like half over there, kind of maybe half in the States. But first step, I need to come back home and kind of get myself together because I was just living really spontaneous. So I asked my job at the time for a raise, which was declined after my performance review. That was good. And I just felt like it was declined because my boss at the time was just looking out for himself and wanted his own gain and just wasn't providing me with a chance to really like move up within the agency, within the company. So I started interviewing from when I was in Turkey. Okay. So right before I leave Turkey, like a week before I leave, I am just looking for jobs at this point. My resume is tailored. I'm talking to my friends back here in the US. I'm talking to mentors. I'm just trying to get connected with everybody on LinkedIn. I am doing all the work. And this popular social media agency that I followed at the time, who's based in the UK, I just love their content. I love what they put out. And I was like, let me see if they're just hiring. Like, I just went on the page to see what they were hiring for. And lo and behold, it was like my prayers were answered. They were hiring for an account manager in their New York office, which they just opened early 2022. So I'm thinking, okay, again, everything is aligning. Like how I talked about in the Eat, Pray, Love episode, everything was just aligning for me. And I was like, okay, I'm going to apply and see where it goes. I had a week left in Turkey. I apply that day. I hear back from them the day after. And they were like, well, let's have a phone interview for the week after. That's when I'm already going to be back in the US. So I'm thinking, okay, this is great. I come back home, I'm getting readjusted back. And of course, I'm still working at my remote job, but I have my phone interview and it goes well. And then I get invited back for a in-person interview because uh they were coming down to New York to the New York office. They already had people working there, and they were coming down to the New York office. And they were like, "We'll be here. This would be a perfect time to like meet you in person and just kind of get to know you. You get to know us." And I'm like, "This is great." Now, at my old job, the vibes were just off, guys. Like, I'm telling you, from the day I asked for that raise slash promotion and expressed my interest to move up and my boss shut it down, the vibes were off from that day. And if you are at a job and you feel the vibes are off, follow your intuition. People may like you may tell your friends like, oh, and maybe like say like oh, you're crazy, or oh, don't worry about it, don't sweat. No, follow your intuition. Doesn't mean you have to go like start applying everywhere and go crazy. No, but you just need to start tailoring your resume and just start putting it out there, whether that's interviewing with people, applying for jobs, interviewing, or even just telling people in your industry, hey, is anything open? Because when the vibes are off, that's usually means something's going to go down. And that sets the tone for the rest of this episode. When the vibes are off, something is going down. So the vibes are off and I'm, just still working, doing my job. I go to to the interview. I met some of the team. I just felt like we got along so well. And I was really excited and hoping I would get this job with this new agency. So a week passes by and I get an email back saying I got the job. And guys, the relief I felt, I'll be honest, it was just like a weight was off my shoulders, because I'm telling you, for a whole month at this point, I'm dealing with my manager and my coworker. It just, everybody just treating me weird. And, I didn't understand, because I feel like when you express interest at a company and want a promotion and want to work up, that should be a great sign. However, I did not know what I was dealing with. And I was trying to play chess. I was trying to play chess, but I was playing checkers and they were playing chess. And then the roles flipped around. So essentially, I wanted this promotion, but my boss, he wanted a promotion as well. However, we were a small company, so not everybody can move up at the same time. Understandable. But just know he thought something was going to play out for him and it did not. And I chose to leave. So when I got the job, it was a huge relief. And I put in like my week's notice. And right after Labor Day, I started at this new agency. And I felt like this was right. This is where it was supposed to all come together. Well, we know by the title of this episode that doesn't happen. So I'm working at my dream job. This agency, it was creative. Everybody was just hands-on working with clients. And again, the bigger team was based in the UK. However, our New York team, it was small, but we got to work with like the clients that they had were hotels in Times Square. We were working with real estate, different co-working spaces. And we were so hands-on with them. I absolutely loved what I did. And it just kind of felt like this is what I was supposed to be doing. But of course, that just came with greater responsibility. I got hired to be an account manager. Of course, that means to manage the accounts, everything that's going on, the execution of projects. And it was overwhelming. Working in marketing can be extremely overwhelming, rigorous, and sometimes you honestly do work sun up to sundown. And I was just feeling really overwhelmed. However, I didn't want to feel ungrateful, because I did express to them that I would love to work in the UK office. I would love to work in London. And they were really receptive to that. And I was like, I obviously love New York and I'm back here. But, I did tell them like my goal is to work in London, and they were very receptive of that. So I felt like, you know what, I can, even though I'm overwhelmed, a year from now, I can be in London. My life can totally change. And so that was the vibe I was going off of. I got one of my friends who I went to Italy with, one of the girls. She came on to work with me as an intern, and we were just such a dynamic duo. We were just these creative marketing, like these creative digital marketers. We really loved what we did. And slowly but surely, the vibes were off. Okay. So I'm going to tell you guys, pretty much we were a bit overwhelmed. Things were, piling up, but we were working through it. Things were going really good. Just the execution of our stuff was great. And one of our bosses come to visit from the UK. And she made a comment that I didn't understand at the time, but it synced through very shortly after. So she comes to visit, takes out for lunch and for dinner, do the whole nine. And we go out for dinner, and she made a comment and was just like, oh, we didn't know how much US taxes cost. We're like so surprised. And I remember thinking, well, that's weird, because you guys have been open from the beginning of 2022. Mind you, this comment was made to us in November or early December. Actually, I think it was more like early December-ish when she had came to visit. And I'm thinking, that's weird. And I just kind of was like, at the time, I just shook it off and was like, okay, who knows, whatever. But then I slowly started getting taken off of email. Like so that dinner happens, it goes well, but she makes that comment. And I'm just thinking, I remember that whole weekend I was thinking, why would she say something like that? And then the next week, I'm slowly removed from emails that I would normally be on, right? Calls I would normally be on. They were like, oh, don't worry about it. Don't, you don't have to be on that call. And from then I knew a layoff is happening. because anytime at a job, like, or a layoff or firing to like termination, like that's coming. Once they start taking you off emails, we're just moving you from meetings, asking you about your day to day, your job, what do you do, how long does it take you? Those aren't normal. Like when you're like when things are going well, they're not asking you that. They're just telling you get it done. When they start asking all these questions or doing these different things, something is going on, something is happening. And so that is what's happening the week before we get laid off. I'm just like, this is weird. And my gut was telling me a layoff was coming because at the time, I think Meta, Facebook, just did like mass layoffs and people were talking about it and saying like they were removed from their emails and have access, just all these different things. And I was reading all these stuff on LinkedIn. So I'm like, something is going on. But I'm like, they would tell me I'm an account manager. But they didn't, of course. And at the time, because I was so overwhelmed with work and with life, I booked a tarot reading. And this tarot reader actually told me I was going to get laid off before it happened. I just didn't believe him. So in the mix of this week, right, this weird week of like being removed from a few meetings, like they were still keeping me in the loop, but I wasn't in the loop. I had booked a tarot reading, I think a few weeks before. So it was like the week of was all the weird stuff happening, but I booked it a few weeks before. And I remember I got on the call and I asked the tarot reader, I was just like, okay, I want to know two things, love and career. Let's start with career. And he just, and I didn't say anything after that. And all the cards he pulled out, he was like, whatever job you're working at, come 2023, you won't be working there. Mind you, this is December of 2022, okay? So he's like, whatever job you're working at, you're not going to have that job in 2023. And I was like, no way. And he was like, I'll tell you even more. And he starts pulling the cards and pulling the cards. And he's like, you're being watched. Your team is being watched. Things aren't what they seem at your job. Evaluations are being done. He was like, they may ask you to come back in a redundant role. But just know things are not what they seem. You won't be there. And he just starts telling me all this stuff. And I wrote all this down in my notes app, which I have not touched. So it still has the date on it, guys. I promise you. And I was just like stunned. And so the more he kept going, I was like, okay, well, give me a timeline. When am I going to stop working at this job? Because at this point, I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to be there for a year plus. He's like, okay, I'll give you a timeline. So he takes out a whole different deck and and it's like a deck of just like time, like whether it's just like a month, 2 years, whatever. So he starts shuffling it and he pulls out a card, turns it to the camera because it's a tarot reading via like Zoom. And I promise you, the card said, wait. It didn't give me a time or a date or some years, months, or weeks. It literally said, wait. 3 days later, we were laid off. I don't even know what to say what it felt like. It felt like betrayal, a stab, it hurt. And it's business, right? And that's what every company, whether it's small, big, medium, large, whatever, it's business to them. And I get it. I understand it. I respect it. However, I felt like as an account manager or just I didn't, I'm like stuttering right now because all these emotions are coming back, that I should have obviously been let in or known a little bit, which, that's what a lot of employees would say. Like, that's what we say and what we would like to know. But there was just no warning and no warning. Like there was just no warning to it at all. They did not set up the US office correctly. And I think that's where my problem stems from. It's not, again, it's business. They're not going to warn you. It's going to be cold turkey. They're going to just rip you off. We know how it goes. We get it. But remember that comment I told you guys about that my old boss made saying, we just didn't know how much taxes were. Okay, so we get laid off and they're like, your last day of work is January 6th. We're going to pay you guys out for the month and the week of work. And that's all we have left. Now, what comes after January in the US? It's tax season. And so up until this point, they were not filing their taxes correctly, nor did they even file, guys, they didn't even file in the US correctly. So this whole time I'm thinking I'm working for my dream job, my dream company. They didn't even set up their business right. And to me, it felt like a whole big experiment. And I say that because my old bosses, to them, getting in the US was like the next big thing. I promise, like that was the next, because they're a UK company. And I think they just wanted to get in the US, hire a bunch of people for us to do all the creative work, kind of get that name out there, and then hope and pray they have enough money to keep us afloat. They didn't even register as a business. So it just felt like they didn't care about us as people. And that's what hurts. That's what was the more hurtful part of all of this. So I get laid off. I am obviously distressed. I'm hurt. I'm just all the things that people usually are when they get laid off. And I start to think, who am I? What am I? What's my purpose? When I thought I had it all figured out. Because just a few months ago, I had those same feelings. Who am I? What am I? What am I going to do? And it all aligned for me to go to Italy and travel all of Europe. Then leaving Europe, I was like, okay, you're going to get this new job, make some more money, and it's all going to align. That happens. When I lose my job, and I truly felt like I was in a cave and it was just collapsing on me. Everything I thought was going to happen didn't, and I was just collapsing. So I spend January trying to figure out my life, my purpose, what am I going to do? And of course, I'm applying for jobs at this time. And I apply for another agency. They call me back. They're like, I could do an interview. It goes well. I got hired to work on Valentine's Day. And I'm like, okay, I was only laid off for a few weeks. I'm back in the biz. I'm back at another agency. I can do this. Well, guys, I get laid off again 3 weeks later. And in this time, I felt like, after I got laid off again for a second time in less than 3 months, I just was done. And I said, I am walking out of agency life. I'm walking out of not marketing per se yet. So I'll tell you guys what's next. But I am done with small agencies. And I'm not saying bigger companies are the best either, because they have their own issues, but I am done with small agencies that overwork you, have this hustle culture. And don't get me wrong, that's great, but I am done with startups and hustle culture. I want structure. I want things together. I want there to be a proper HR system. I want there to just have things in place that I feel safe. I don't get severance packages when you get laid off from an agency, or from a startup. You just don't. At least with Facebook and Twitter and all these, these bigger companies, whether it's Accenture or KPMG, you get at least some type of severance and unemployment. With an agency, you don't get any severance but your last check. And it's just stressful. So I have respectfully bowed out of agency life. It's not for me. I don't want to work this when I'm 30 or 40 years old and be like, I have this startup culture and I'm hustling and bustling and we're just now making a profit, even though we're a company of 12 years. Like, that's not something I take pride in. And I'm leaving that. So you guys are probably thinking, okay, Sierra, we get it. What's next? You're laid off twice in the span of 3 months. Life kind of just feels like I'm floating. What is next? Well, of course, as you guys know, I have the podcast back now, which is great. But in between me trying to figure out what I'm going to do, I had the luxury, really, of having great friends. And I went to my college friends from Florida came up. And we did brunch together and had like the best weekend. And at brunch, I just asked them, I was like, guys, what do you see me doing? Because I don't know what I'm doing anymore. And my friend Fabrin, shout out to Fabrin, turned to me and said, Sierra, you should have your own talk show. And then my friend Darwin's and Danielle was like, Sierra, like, you know, like you had the podcast and da. And they knew me in college. Like in college, I was doing podcasting and going around and asking people questions before it was even a thing, before it was even going viral. I of course, didn't invent podcasting or like interviewing people on the street or around the office, but in college, we all worked together. And I would do that a lot. I would just go around and ask people questions. I would interview them. I really like had to join that. And I started this podcast, like I told you guys, back in college. And then I was I didn't have time to like upkeep with it. But he told me, he was like, I know somebody who works at BET. I'll give you their info and go from there. And so guys, that's what I did. He gave me their info. I contacted her and I was just like, hey, my name is Sierra. I would really love to work in TV, media, or entertainment. Can we just have a time to chat? And we chatted for about an hour. And it was probably one of the best, like, first impression introductory chats I've had. And she was like, I 100% am willing to help you. And I see your passion and I have a mentorship program. And I was like, I'm in, I'm sold. Because at this point, you have nothing to lose. I've been laid off twice in 3 months. I have nothing to, and not saying that being in her mentorship program would interfere or anything like that, but I fully have realized at this point in time, this is not my passion. This is not what I'm meant to be doing. And that tarot reader was right. Because he told me, he was like, you're not going to be working at this job. And he also told me, the next thing you're going to do is going to be so far from what you do now. So I did, sometimes I still do marketing, but he was like, you're going to be in a whole different category. Like your career is going to take a whole 180 on you. And I fully feel like God set me up in the best position possible in my life to work at these incredible and amazing agencies, regardless of how I felt at the time of obviously being laid off and being put in these weird vibes. I learned so much. And being laid off twice in 3 months, that of course can hit your self-esteem, but it only showed me and brought me to what I really want to be doing, which is obviously the podcast and working in TV and media. And I told her, I was like, I want to be a part of your internship. Your mentorship, whatever. I am here and I want to do it. And so I've been working with her for the past month now, getting my LinkedIn together, obviously getting the podcast back up and running. And I'll be in Atlanta in April, going to go pitch my podcast and meeting some other Black creators and seeing what's next. So I'm in a good space. And for anybody who's been laid off, feel your emotions, feel it. I felt like a failure. I felt like I wasn't worth it. I did not know, because my whole career was wrapped in my personality. I went from just going to college, graduating, getting a job, like always having something on my plate and wrapping that as my whole personality. And sometimes that's what we do. Our careers, our personality, and maybe it's not our personality, but it's more so of who we are. I think that's a better way to put it. It's who we are. Because the first thing that people ask us is, oh, hey, what do you do? It's not, hey, how are you? It's, what do you do? And it takes a hit to your self-esteem. But you're not a failure. You're not a bad person. You tried and did everything you could have. And this is a next step into what you should be doing. So feel those emotions and take what you learned and use it to your advantage. Play chess, not checkers. Okay. And that's just kind of like my advice, because I'm still unemployed. I'm still going through all of, I think I'm over all of the roller coaster of emotions, but I'm still figuring out what's next for me and what's my purpose. And I'm so blessed and so thankful to have a great support system, to have a great mentor, to have great friends that could help guide me. And so if you're in this same position as I am, where you're laid off or looking for a job, or asking yourself that question again, what is my purpose? I'm going to tell you, get a great support system. It doesn't have to be 8 people. And if it is, great. It just needs to be a few solid people, okay? It needs to be a friend, a mentor, somebody you can go to that is not going to sugarcoat things, and somebody that can help you get into spaces that you can't by yourself. Find those 4 people. Give yourself space, time, and love, and start following or finding what you're curious and what you're passionate about. And it will all align. So, guys, that is the episode, okay? Laid off, what's next? And that is what is next. I'm still finding my purpose, what I want to do, what I love to do. And the podcast is here to stay. And I can't wait to show you guys what I'll be up to in Atlanta. So again, please like, share, rate the podcast. That will definitely help me so much. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.